G'day folks, it's Rob here and welcome to our little backyard farm. Today's clip is going to be about ginger. Again, I posted a harvest clip last weekend, but this time we're going to look at how we like to process the ginger once it's harvested so we can use it throughout the year. The ginger family would have to be one of my favourite plants to grow. We grow a few of them here, just to name a few. The normal ginger, the galangal or galangal, Thai ginger, and also turmeric. So the first method I wanted to chat about was preserving in alcohol. This is a method we've used in the past and we're doing again this year. All you need to do is give your ginger as it comes in from the yard or from the market a very good scrub, get all the dirt off and any foreign material from outside, and also any of the dark patches of the loose ginger skin as well. From there, the skin needs to come off. I find it comes off very easily just with the edge of the knife, just scraping it off gently. That way you get to save most of the flesh on the ginger root. Any little bits of root that are growing out of it, or blemishes, bruises, I like to cut them out so you've just got nice, fresh, clean ginger to work with. After the skins come off, I give them another rinse under the tap just to remove any foreign particles and then pat them dry with a nice clean towel. From there, it's as easy as popping your sections of ginger into a jar or a container. I prefer a glass jar, and then topping up with a 40% or higher spirit. In my case, I'm using vodka. Other ones you could use are possibly rums and gins and things like that. With ours, I've put a little glass weight on top of the ginger just to keep it submerged under the vodka. Now, as for storage after this, I like to keep it in the fridge. I have read people keeping it just in a storage, a cool pantry, but I prefer to keep it in the fridge. Shelf life or refrigerator life, anywhere from a couple of months up to 12 months has been quoted online. I'm definitely no food scientist, so I can't give you an exact figure. When it comes to using the ginger, all you need to do is just pull out a little section that you want to use, or just chop off a section and put the remainder back in the jar, and then it can be used like any other ginger. One of the reasons we did pick vodka was it doesn't have a strong flavour, so it can go into things like stir fries or curries or stews without any, real flavours coming through from the vodka. Dehydrating your ginger is also another fantastic way you can prolong its shelf life. All we've done is just given a bit of a wash, again to remove any dirt or foreign matter from outside, and also just to knock off any of those loose flaky bits of skin. I slice the ginger rhizome into 5mm or 1/5 of an inch thick sections and then lay them down on the dehydrating racks. They get slid into the unit and I turned it on at roughly around about 45 degrees Celsius. Once the chips were dried to our satisfaction, they were just let to cool on the racks in the unit itself. Then once cooled, they were popped into an airtight glass jar and just popped away in a dark place in the pantry. As to how we use these dried ginger chips, well, we've mainly used it to make ginger powder, so we can get fresh, extremely aromatic ginger powder whenever we need it in baking or in stews and curries as well. Very easy thing to do. You just pop a small handful of little ginger chips into a food processor, probably a little coffee grinder or herb grinder would work better, and then blast them until you've got the desired consistency. Before we use it, I like to run the powder through a very fine mesh sieve just to get out any little bits of the fibre that didn't break down and also any bits of the chunky skin. Those little sections just get dumped straight into the compost bin so they don't go to waste. As for the shelf life of these dried ginger chips, I've had some in the pantry now for coming up to about 9 months, and when we run them through the food processor, they still come out smelling as fresh and fragrant as the first chips we processed probably about 8 months ago. And if you've got a little food vacuum sealer unit, you could probably prolong the shelf life even further by running them through there and popping the sealed pouches away in the back of the pantry. I've also tried to use these chips to make up a little bit of an infusion, a ginger infusion, adding in a little bit of lime juice and honey as well. I found they don't really impart as much flavour as when you use the ginger pulp, which is what I'm going to explain next, so it's probably not a method I'd use. Now, my favourite way to preserve the ginger to use in cooking and teas and different drinks is to actually freeze it. I do like to turn it into a pulp or a paste first before I freeze it. I just find that it does last a little bit better that way. The first step I take is to wash the ginger, as with the other ways that we like to save it. Then I like to scrape the skin off. From there, it's just a matter of popping it into the food processor, turning it on until you got the desired consistency. I have found that adding in around about a tablespoon or so of water does help to create a nice smooth paste. Once I'm happy with the consistency of the ginger, I spread it out onto a tray that will go into the freezer. I like to score lines with a knife just over the surface, then the tray goes in the freezer. Once the tray was frozen, it was turned out onto a chopping board. I placed a chopstick underneath where the scored lines were and managed to snap off a lot of the rows and small bricks that way. For any that were a little bit more stubborn, I needed to use a cleaver. From there, the little bricks get stored away in containers or clip sealed bags, and I also like to write the date on there just so we know how long they've been in the freezer. As for using these little frozen bricks, if I'm doing a stew or a curry, I'll just toss a little brick in there and it'll defrost and impart its flavours as the meal cooks. If I'm making up a stir fry or a little herbal infusion, what I like to do is just let the block defrost before I add it in. If I'm running a little bit short on time and I've forgotten to take the brick out early, all I do is get the knife and make nice little fine shaves down one surface of it, and that just lets it defrost a little bit quicker before throwing it in the water or the wok. As I mentioned before, I do prefer to use the pulp in the infusions. I basically let it defrost first before I do put it in the tea. It does tend to make the tea a little bit cloudy when you add it in as a pulp, but for me that's not a problem at all because it's all about the flavour. Now if you've got a raw piece of ginger from the market or you've harvested from the garden and you want to store that in the fridge, the best way I've found to do it is just to put it in a little sealed plastic bag or a container if you've got one the right size. I've seen people recommend wrapping them in wet paper towel and wrapping them in brown paper bags and that sort of thing. But for me, I've found they always last a lot longer if I just pop it in the clip seal bag, try and get as much air out as I can and keep it down in the vegetable crisper section. With the paper bag method, I find they tend to dehydrate and go a little bit wrinkly after about a week or so. As for saving some of your own harvest so you can have a crack at growing some next season, there's a few different ways you can go about it depending on the climate that you live in. Here in the subtropics, we're lucky enough that we can just leave it in the ground. The plants will tend to die back, most varieties over winter, but then come spring, as soon as the ground conditions have warmed up enough, up pop the shoots and away you go. I've actually got some overwintering in some little pouches down here beside me, and they tend to be still staying green, but I've got them in a position that gets a lot of sunlight. Now for you folks in cooler areas where you may get a bit of a hard freeze on the ground and the rhizomes may rot if left in the soil, you can actually lift them out, put them in a pot or a container and bring them inside somewhere a little bit warmer and overwinter them that way. The other way you can go about it, and my preferred method, is to use coconut coir or coconut peat, coconut fibre. We use it as a soil additive here. It's very good at absorbing moisture, so if I pack those rhizomes in the coconut coir, I'm fairly confident any excess moisture that shouldn't be in there and could make the rhizomes rot is drawn in by the coconut coir, so that might be something for you to think about. When it comes to galangal, you can pretty much all preserve it the same way as ginger. With the turmeric, I have actually done a preserving clip on that if you wanted to check that out. A few different ways that we like to prepare it. Pretty similar to the ginger, but yeah, suss it out if you're interested. I've actually got a load of turmeric down the back that I'll be harvesting very soon, and we've also got other clips if you're interested in harvest clips. Some awesome ginger pulled out of the aquaponics last year, and already ginger harvest from this year, and this one here will be coming out in the next week or so as well, so keep an eye out for that clip if you're interested in seeing how that one goes. So Lizzie's been very patient while I've been shooting this clip, folks, but I think it's almost time to take her for a walk. So one more, that's it, Lizzie. So thanks very much for coming along. I do hope that you've got something out of the clip. I also hope that your gardens and aquaponic systems are booming, and I will catch you next time. Cheers, folks. Have a top one. You had enough now, Liz? No more ball? Where's your ball? Or do you want to go for a walk? Go for a walk? Way, you're coming in too quick. Now say goodbye. Say bye-bye, Lizzie. Catch you, folks.